You wake before the sun rises. The air is damp and cold. The earth beneath your sleeping mat still soaked from last night's rain. Your feet are sore. Your shoulders ache from the weight of your gear, and your mouth is dry. You slept under a makeshift tent, fashioned from straw and an old travel cloak, huddled beside men just as filthy and tired as you. You're not a noble warrior. You're not a man of honor or rank. You Ray and Ashigo, just another foot soldier in a world where your life is worth less than the sword you Dante carry. You weren't born into war. You were a farmer, a fisherman, the son of a blacksmith. But war came anyway. It always does. Your lord sent his men to your village, conscripting the able-bodied, promising food, pay, and glory. You knew better, but you came. You had no choice. Your family needed coin, and so, here you are, surrounded by strangers wearing mismatched armor, most of which is made from lacquered wood, bamboo, and rope. You have a simple helmet, a rough breastplate, and a long warrior spear. If you're lucky, it's sharp. If not, it'll break the first time it hits something solid. Your sandals are worn through. Your leggings are crusted in mud, and the smell sweat, smoke. And old blood clings to everything. Breakfast is a few mouthfuls of cold rice, hardened into a ball the night before. You chew it slowly, not because it tastes good, but because it might be the only thing you eat until nightfall. There's no talk of strategy among the foot soldiers. You don't know the plan. You don't know if you'll march, fight, or dig today. You simply follow orders, shouted down the line from men on horseback who never meet your eyes. You don't question them. That's not your place. The camp begins to stir. The elite samurai are already awake, sharpening blades, tightening arm straps, drinking tea with ritual precision. You're told to pack up and move. So you march. For hours. Your feet blister. The spear gets heavier with each step, and the sun beats down on your back. There is no conversation, only the steady shuffle of hundreds of feet through dust and gravel. You wonder what will happen when the fighting starts. You've seen battle before. You've seen friends fall screaming in the mud, cut down before they could even raise a weapon. You've stepped over the bodies of enemies, some not yet cold, and tried not to vomit at the sight. There's no poetry here, no glory. Only fear, confusion, and blood. When the battle comes, it happens quickly. You're told to form a line, to wait for the signal. Your heart pounds. You grip your spear tight, your hands slippery with sweat. Then the shouting begins. Arrows rain down from somewhere above. Men scream. Someone beside you falls, and then you run charging forward with the others. Spears out, voices raised, eyes wild. You don't think. You don't see or you strike. You just push forward, trying not to trip, trying not to die. You clash with the enemy. It's chaos. You're shoved, kicked, hit. You jab your spear into something, someone, and feel it stick. You're nearly crushed by a man falling backward. You trip over his body. You scramble to your feet. There's more shouting. Horns blare. The line begins to fall back. You run again, this time not to charge, but to survive. The dust, the screams, the smell of blood, all of it blurs together. And then, just like that, it's over. The enemy retreats or surrenders. You're still standing. Barely. You're shaking. You don't know if you won. You don't even know what village or lord you were fighting for. All you know is that you're alive. For now, after the battle, the looting begins for a lowly Ashigaru. This is the only real reward. You search bodies for anything valuable, coins, pouches, even clothing. You find a pair of sandals not completely ruined and claim them as your own. You dare not touch the swords. Those are for the samurai. Taking one could mean death. You return to camp exhausted. There is no celebration, no songs, no sake. You sit with the others, cleaning your gear, binding wounds, sharing scraps of dried fish. A few men are missing. No one speaks their names. They were friends. Now, they're just gone. The war continues. The Lord says the campaign will last another month, maybe more. You will march again, fight again, sleep in the rain, eat spoiled rice, and hope your luck holds. Some mend it. Some try to fake illness. Some simply fall behind and are never seen again. But you keep going. You don't know why. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's habit. Maybe it's just easier to keep moving forward than to think about what it all means. When winter comes, everything gets worse. The mud turns to ice. The food runs thin. Disease spreads through camp. You see men lose toes to frostbite, others coughing blood, too weak to stand. Still, no one leaves. You are bound to your lord, to your duty, to this endless cycle. And when the fighting stops, when peace is declared or the enemy surrenders, you go home if your home is still there. You return to your village with a few coins and a haunted stare. You don't speak of what you saw. You return to the fields, the nets, the forge. But the war never leaves you. Not really. The next spring, they come again. More banners, more promises, another campaign. And you go, because that's what men like you do. You are a shako, not a hero, not a legend, just a shadow in someone else's story. You've grown up in a land torn apart by endless war. Every season brings news of another siege, another burned village, another daimyo grasping for power. There is no peace. Only shifting alliances and crumbling order. You hear tales in the market stalls and roadside inns about a new kind of lord rising from the province of Oweri. They call him strange, reckless, insulting. But you listen more closely than others. His name is Oda Nobunaga, and you're starting to realize this man is different. You've heard that when his father died, Nobunaga showed up at the funeral in outlandish clothes, throwing incense instead of offering it respectfully. People called him the Fool of Oweri, and many thought his reign would be short-lived. His behavior was erratic, but what they failed to notice, what you begin to understand, is that beneath the strange surface lies something else, a mind made for war. While other warlords cling to old ways, Nobunaga discards tradition. He surrounds himself with those who prove useful, not those born to privilege. His tactics are daring, and it all becomes impossible to ignore after the Battle of Okazama. Nobunaga, commanding a fraction of the forces, defeats Imagawa Yoshimoto, one of the most powerful daimyo of the time, by striking fast and unpredictably during a storm. People stop calling him a fool after that. His power grows quickly. As you carry your spear from campaign to campaign, you begin to see his red banners fluttering on more and more battlefields. Nobunaga does not just fight. He conquers, absorbs, transforms. He modernizes his army. You notice changes. Peasant soldiers like yourself are drilled in. Formations, taught discipline, equipped with no weapons. You hear that Nobunaga has purchased thousands of Portuguese matchlock guns Tanegashima and uses them not just as exotic tools, but as the backbone of new military tactics. At the Battle of Nagashino, you watch it unfold firsthand. Rows of Ashigaru, protected by wooden stockades, firing coordinated volleys. Cavalry charges that once crushed armies now fall apart under withering gunfire. The old rules are dying. You're part of something terrifying and something new. Nobunaga is not just changing warfare. He is changing Japan itself. You begin to notice his hand in things far beyond the battlefield. Cities along trade routes start to prosper. Market taxes are relaxed, foreign as Portuguese traders. Jesuit priests begin appearing in castle towns. Some locals grumble, but Nobunaga sees opportunity. He uses imported goods and ideas like weapons tools to shape the country as he sees it. His power base grows. You watch as castle after castle falls to his armies. You hear stories of the Azai, the Asakura. The Tokai reach one once mighty, now humbled. Nobunaga's generals spread across the map, securing land and enforcing his will. You begin to sense a strange feeling among the people around you, part admiration, part fear, because for all his brilliance, Nobunaga is ruthless when he encounters resistance. He responds with overwhelming force. You remember the rumors in Ryokuji, a sacred monastery high on Mount Hai, home to warrior monks who opposed his rise. Nobunaga marches his army there and burns it to the ground. Thousands are killed. The flames light the sky for miles. He has no patience for old institutions, no sympathy for holy men who wield swords. You wonder what kind of man orders such a thing and what kind of future he envisions. Still, you march behind his banners. You've seen enough warlords come and go, but none like him. He builds a fortress on the shores of Lake Biwazuchi Castle. It's unlike anything you've seen. Tall, grand, adorned in gold leaf, filled with foreign curiosities and vast rooms for diplomacy. It's a symbol, not just of wealth or power, but of vision. Nobunaga no longer simply wants to defeat rivals. He wants to redefine what it means to rule. You pass through towns where his policies are already being felt. Roads are safer. Guild restrictions are lifted. Rice flows into the markets. But with these benefits comes unease. Nobunaga tolerates no betrayal, no hesitation. Those who falter are removed, sometimes executed. Even high-ranking retainers are not safe. You wonder if anyone is still. By the late 1570s, it seems nothing can stop him. The shogun is a puppet under his control. His armies stretch from the capital to the western seas. You begin to think, perhaps for the first time in your life, that the wars might end. That Nobunaga might do the impossible, unify Japan under a single banner. You watch him ride through Kyoto with an air of absolute command. Not a king, not a shogun, something else. Something harder to define. But not everyone is comfortable with that. Not everyone is willing to accept this new world he is building, especially when it comes at the cost of the old ways, old faiths, and old families. You begin to hear murmurs. In taverns, in barracks, among lesser lords whose power is fading in his shadow. Akechi Mitsuhide, you've seen him before, one of Nobunaga's most trusted generals, loyal, educated, calm. He rides beside the Demon King, enforces his decrees, shares his victories, but something changes. Perhaps it's insult, perhaps ambition, perhaps fear. You don't know, but what you do know is that betrayal is coming, and that even a man like Oda Nobunaga is not untouchable, not forever. But that is a story for another day, for the next page of history. Written not with ink, but with fire and ash. You don't notice anything unusual at first. It's summer 1582 and the campaign against the Mori clan in the west is unfolding just as expected. You've been stationed far from the capital. Under the command of one of Nobunaga's generals, there are whispers of victory coming soon. The fighting is fierce, but the momentum is yours. You believe, like so many others, that Japan is finally on the verge of unification. Oda Nobunaga has done the impossible. And now, all that remains is to finish it. Then the rumors begin. Strange ones, quiet ones. You hear that General Akechi Mitsuhide, one of Nobunaga's most trusted men, has turned round. His army was supposed to be reinforcing the campaign in the west. Instead, it's heading east, toward Kyoto, toward the capital, toward Nobunaga. You pause. You wonder if it's a mistake, a repositioning, and all you didn't hear, but the rumors spread faster than facts. And soon they aren't rumors anymore. Word reaches the camp like a slow-moving storm. Nobunaga is at Honnoji, a Buddhist temple in Kyoto, resting, relaxed, guarded by only a small number of attendants. He believes the battle is elsewhere. He believes he's safe. Mitsuhide knows that the betrayal is swift. You imagine it in fragments before dawn. The sound of footsteps on gravel, the temple gates seal, the shouting, the flames. Nobunaga's men fight valiantly, but they're hopelessly outnumbered. There is no time for rescue, no chance for retreat. The demon king, the most feared and powerful warlord in Japan, is suddenly trapped, alone, surrounded by men he once called allies. You imagine the moment when he realizes what's happening. When he understands that this is no drill, no rogue skirmish. This is a coup, a calculated move, the ultimate betrayal. Nobunaga, for all his power, cannot escape this. But he can control how it ends, and so, in true samurai fashion, he writes the final lines of his story himself. He retreats to a quiet room within the temple. Perhaps he lights incense. Perhaps he doesn't. The accounts differ. Some say he commits seppuku, ritual suicide, using a dagger to end his own life before the flames consume the room. Others claim the fire takes him whole, that he vanishes in smoke and ash, leaving only legend behind. No body is ever found. No grave is ever confirmed. Only silence. For a moment, time seems to stop. When the news reaches your ears, you do not believe it. How could you? This is Oda Nobunaga, the man who redefined warfare, the one who burned in Ryokuji, who marched on Kyoto, who wore the future-like armor and rode straight through the heart of history. Dead. Burned in a temple ambush. But it's true. You feel it in the tension of your commanders. You see it in the hurried movements of your fellow soldiers, in the sudden confusion among allies. Mitsuhide declares himself the new ruler, the man who has ended a tyrant's reign. But his victory is hollow. Within days, Nobunaga's other generals move swiftly. One in particular, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, acts faster than anyone expects. He had been far away, still fighting the Mori. But when the news of Honnoji reaches him, he signs a truce, wheels his army round, and marches straight toward Mitsuhide. It's as if the spirit of Nobunaga flows through him. You follow Hideyoshi now, barely sleeping, moving by forced march through rain and mud. You hear he wants vengeance not just for loyalty's sake, but to secure what Nobunaga had nearly built, a unified Japan. You arrive at the battle of Yamazaki. Mitsuhide's forces are caught off guard, demoralized, disorganized. They fight. But not for long. Mitsuhide is defeated within 11 days of the betrayal. Some say he is killed by peasants as he tries to escape. Others say he takes his own life in the end. It doesn't matter. He is gone. And just like that, the man who brought down the greatest warlord of the age disappears almost as quickly as he rose. You stand on the edge of a battlefield still reeking of blood and smoke. And you realize the demon king is dead. His traitor is dead, but the war continues. Nobunaga's dream did not die at Honnoji. Hideyoshi will carry it forward, and years later, Tokugawa Ieyasu will finish it. But in this moment, you feel the weight of something bigger than victory or defeat. You've witnessed the fall of a legend. You've seen firsthand how power never rests, how betrayal can undo years of ambition in a single morning. How even the strongest fortress means nothing if the enemy is inside your own gates. You remember Nobunaga's voice. You remember his red banners, his gunpowder, his fire. You think of Azuchi Castle now abandoned. Its golden walls no longer shining. The world has shifted again. And yet, you're still here, just a foot soldier, marching, obeying, surviving. You don't know what the future holds. You only know that the man who changed Japan left. Behind more than burned temples and empty thrones. He left behind a blueprint, a legacy of transformation through fear, brilliance, and blood. And though he is gone, the world he shaped is not. You walk forward, your spear at your side. The road stretching ahead, and in your quiet, weary heart, you carry the ashes of Hanuji, where fire consumed a king, and history turned its page. You wake to the weight of mist on your face. The morning air is colder than it should be, damp, still. It clings to your armor, your fingers, your breath round you. Thousands of men shift silently in the fog, their outlines blurry. Like shadows in a dream, this is Sekigahara. October 21st, 1600. You are a foot soldier again, a Shigaru. Older now, heavier in the joints, but still marching under the banner you've sworn to follow. Tokugawa Ieyasu has gathered an enormous force, and you are one of them, one speck in a tide of warriors that stretches through the mist across the valley. You know what this day means. Everyone does. The Toyotomi loyalists are on the other side. Ishida Mitsunari commands them, standing in the name of the old order. But today, that old order will be tested, or broken. The entire country hangs in the balance, and yet nothing moves, not yet. You can barely see your own feet. The fog is unnatural, too thick, too quiet. Even the birds seem to have abandoned the hills. All you hear are muffled coughs, the gentle clink of armor, and distant murmurs. Somewhere, a man begins to softly recite a prayer. You don't know his name. You don't know if you'll ever see him again. The tension presses in from all sides. You can feel it in your ribs, in your gut. Somewhere to your left, a daimyo's banner flutters briefly, the family crest momentarily visible before vanishing again into the white. Your hands are damp, not from rain, but sweat. Your spear is ready, but you still don't know where to point it. Then, suddenly, the horns sound, loud, slow, mournful. They roll across the battlefield like thunder through water. It has begun. Muskets crack in the distance. You hear the shots before you see the flashes. Arrows hiss through the mist, but you cannot see where they come from or where they land. And then movement. The order to advance. You press forward with the others, shoulder to shoulder, step by step. The earth beneath your sandals is soft, soaked with rain from the night before. The mud sucks at your feet, your armor chafes at your shoulders, and still, you move. All around you, there are men. You can hear them breathing, grunting, cursing under their breath. But you cannot see more than their silhouettes. Then, out of nowhere, a shout, clashing steel, a scream. You lunge forward, spear ready. But there's nothing in front of you, just fog. Then, someone stumbles into you, friend or enemy. You don't know until he collapses at your feet, bleeding from the stomach, gasping for air. You step round him. You don't look back. You can't afford to. Somewhere up ahead, someone calls for reinforcements. You move toward the sound. That's all you can do. You push, you stab, you duck. You try not to die. The hours pass in a blur. The fog begins to thin. Slowly, cautiously, the valley reveals itself. You begin to see the battlefield not as a place, but as a grave. Bodies already litter the grass. Smoke drifts from abandoned cannons. Some units have vanished entirely. You spot Tokugawa's central line holding firm, but the right flank is in disarray, and the left there's movement. But not from your own men. You squint. Are they attacking? Or just watching? You don't know. No one seems to know. The battlefield, for all its chaos, feels frozen. Like pieces on a board waiting for unseen hands to move them. Then, suddenly, it happens. One of the Western Lords Kobayakawa Hideyoki's forces finally begin to move. They had been sitting high on Mount Matsuo all morning, waiting, stalling, doing nothing. Everyone thought they were with Ashida Mitsunari, but now they descend, not toward Tokugawa's army but toward the western flank, toward their supposed allies. The betrayal is swift and brutal. You don't hear the orders, you just see the shift, like the wind changing direction. Mitsunari's. Men panic, some resist, others flee. The balance collapses. What was once a line becomes a rout. You and your comrades push forward, barely needing to fight. The battle, as suddenly as it began, is over. The Toyotomi side breaks apart. Some are captured, others cut down as they run. When the fog clears completely, the valley is filled with silence. The kind of silence that follows a storm, not peace, but exhaustion. You are alive, but you are not sure how or why. You rest beside a broken banner pool, wiping mud from your face, watching smoke rise from distant fires. You hear that Tokugawa Ieyasu is already gathering his generals, that he has claimed victory, that this single battle has ended a century of war. But you don't feel like a victor, you feel like a man who walked through a dream of violence and survived. The fog may have lifted, but something else remains an unease. No one talks about tactics. They talk about ghosts, about the armies that didn't move, the promises made in secret. The silence on the ridge. You wonder what would have happened if the fog never lifted, if the mountain forces had stayed neutral, if just one command had gone another way. But the battle is over. History, like the smoke, drifts away into the air, and all you can do is breathe it in. You return to the battlefield years later, but this time not as a soldier. You're standing under a wide sky, now clear of smoke and fog, looking down at the quiet earth of Sekigahara. The rice fields have returned. The hills are still. There are no war cries here anymore, only the wind rustling through grass that's grown over old scars. The bones are still buried. Some say thousands died in that single morning. Some were burned where they fell. Others were covered hastily with soil and leaves. Most were never named. For centuries, they remained underfoot, forgotten by history, but never truly gone. Now you're here not to fight, but to uncover. You're part of a quiet effort, an archaeological team digging slowly through time itself. You bend down with care, not wanting to disturb the silence. You hold a trowel instead of a sword, a brush instead of a spear. The mud beneath your knees holds secrets older than any living memory. You gently scrape through layers of soil. Centimeters, not meters. Every inch matters. Every fragment has a story. The first thing you find is not a sword or a helmet, but a rib. Curved, broken, worn by the centuries. It emerges from the ground like a whisper. No name. No armor. Just the remains of someone who died long before your grandparents were born. You mark its location. You record the depth. You photograph the angle of the bones. This is how you learn what battle was really like, not through tales of glory, but through what the earth remembers. You find pieces of matchlock guns rusted, warped, still bearing the signature grooves of their barrels. You find armor plates with broken fastenings. One has a dent from what might have been a musket ball. Another has a blade gash-deep clean. Silent, you find arrowheads, dozens of them. Some are still embedded in bits of fabric fragments, of clothing so decayed they crumble under your breath. You don't talk much as you work. No one on the team does. The atmosphere is sacred, as if you're in a shrine built out of time. Every piece that comes out of the earth is a reminder. Real people lived here, fought here, died here. You find a coin, a single copper moan, worn smooth from touch. It was likely sewn into someone's sleeve, a final offering to be used in case they survived. They didn't. You find teeth. Tiny, some still in a jawbone. Not all the dead were grown men. There were teenage conscripts, pages, servants, camp followers. You find what may have been a child's sandal, half preserved by mud and ash. And you realize the battlefield wasn't just a place of warriors. It was a place of everyone. Digging here isn't like excavating a palace or a temple. There's no grandeur, no treasures, no inscriptions. The truth is in the broken things, the twisted armor, the snapped weapons, the bone fragments to shattered to reassemble. Each one is evidence, not of glory, but of chaos, of real death, real fear. You begin to notice patterns, clusters of bones near small. Rid places where men likely made last stands or were ambushed. Burn marks in the soil, evidence of fires used to cremate the dead when mass burial was too dangerous. You find a small lacquer box, half burned, containing nothing but a mirror shard and a lock of hair. It was likely meant as a keepsake. It became an urn. Nearby, your colleague finds something different, a helmet crest. Golden, shaped like a pair of horns. It's more intact than anything else you found today. Probably belonged to a samurai of higher status. But even he was left behind. There are no markers, no gravestones, just decay. You pause, sitting back on your heels, wiping sweat from your brow. Round you, the field is alive again, not with soldiers, but with memory. Every step you take here is on ground where history bled, and you begin to understand something strange. That the story of Sekigahara isn't just one moment in 1600, but 1,000 quiet moments unfolding slowly through centuries. The bones remember. The earth holds the truth. The victors wrote the histories, but the soul tells what was left out. No one talks much about the men who froze in the fog, confused and leaderless. No one writes poems about the deserters caught between loyalties. No scrolls honor the Ashigaru whose names were never recorded. But here, you meet them, piece by piece, one broken buckle at a time. At the end of the day, you pack up the fragments with careful hands. Some will go to labs, some to museums, others will be reburied with ceremony. All will be remembered, even if only by a few. And when you leave the field, looking back one last time, you realize you spent the day not digging through dirt, but through silence, through the layers of what people chose not to say. And in that silence, you found a deeper truth about battle, loyalty, and what it means to disappear. You wake just before sunrise. The air is damp, almost thick. As you step carefully into a small wooden boat, the lake is mirror still, not a ripple. Just mist gliding along the surface like slow-moving breath. You're here to study what the water has hidden for centuries, not scrolls or statues, but the remains of men who fought, fled, and drowned. Beneath the surface lies a sunken battlefield, the Battle of Anagoa, fought in 1570, spilled into the river that now feeds this lake. Desperate men leapt into the water, weighed down by armor, their feet sealed not by sword, but by current. Today, you are not a warrior, you're a diver, a careful explorer of submerged memory. You pull on your suit, check your equipment, and slip into the cold, dark stillness as you descend. Sound disappears, only your own breath, slow and mechanical, keeps you company. The water is murky, visibility is low, but you know what to look for. The lake bed is softened, uneven, rippled with time. You see the first piece almost by accident to shingle, twisted and half-buried, its lacquer peeled away by years of silt and algae. Nearby, you find a short sword, rusted, fragile, still resting where it sank. It had been drawn. Likely in panic, you imagine the soldier clutching it as he waded into chaos, trying to escape, then sinking like a stone. Foot soldiers weren't equipped for swimming. Their gear was meant for marching and stabbing, not floating. The moment they hit the water, their fate was sealed. You find sandals, one lodged between rocks, still woven, still whole. You find an arrow quiver, its leather hardened and curled like dried kelp. The arrows themselves are long gone decayed or washed away, but the shape remains, like a shadow of intention. As you move along the lake bed, the silence deepens. You find no complete skeletons here. The currents scattered the dead, but you find teeth, pieces of ribs. You find a helmet, wedged into the mud at an odd angle, its crest missing. The decorative horns, the flourishes, those rarely survive underwater. But the iron bow remains, cold, smooth, still protective. Even in death, you try not to disturb too much. Each movement of your hand stirs decades of settled silt. Time, in water, folds over itself like layers of silk. Everything is slower, softer, but not less brutal. You find a Subara sword garden engraved with what looks like a peony flower. It had once been polished, passed from hand to hand. Someone likely cherished it. Now it rests on the bottom of a lake, wrapped in decay. Not all weapons found here were dropped in battle. Some were thrown away, discarded after defeat, abandoned by fleeing men, or buried as offerings. In some areas, archaeologists have found whole bundles of spears and blades tossed into the lake together, as if someone wanted to make sure they'd never be used again. A symbolic drowning. You swim past a low ridge of rocks and find something unusual, rows of sharpened stakes, still planted into the lake bed, pointing upstream. These were underwater defenses, designed to impale horses or trap boats. Faint remains of tactical thinking. You imagine the general who ordered them placed there, measuring depth and angle, trying to outwit the river itself. He failed. Most of them did. Above you, the surface remains calm. People pass by in modern boats, unaware they float over weapons, armor, and the scattered traces of panic. Sometimes you wonder how much history lies underwater, and touched simply because no one thought to look down. The greatest battles are often the least preserved, too messy to wet, too difficult to frame in a museum case. But down here, you find truths you won't read in history books. The drowned didn't die in clean lines or grand poses. They flailed. They fought water. They let go of weapons. Their hands grasped at nothing, and the lake, indifferent and still, accepted them one by one. You swim slowly back toward the boat, on your way, you spot a final object, a small pouch, sealed shut with lacquered string. You don't open it. You log its location. Someone else will examine it in a lab, but you wonder what's inside. Coins, a charm, a name tag, the last hope of a foot soldier who didn't want to be forgotten. Back on the surface, the light is brighter now. The sun has risen above the mist. You pull yourself out of the water, dripping and quiet, the weight of what you saw settling in slowly. You sit on the dock, peeling off your gear, thinking about how many more lie below, waiting. Not for recovery, maybe, but for recognition. To be remembered, even in passing. Because the lake remembers. It keeps everything. It smooths it, softens it, covers it in silence. But it does not erase. And when you close your eyes, even briefly, you still feel the cold of the water, the drag of the current, and the shape of a broken sword under your fingers. The armor is still down there. The men who wore it may be lost, but their weight remains, and sometimes that's all history is, the lingering weight of things we dropped long ago, resting quietly beneath the surface. You are walking through the lower corridors of Heimji Castle, not the parts tourists usually see, but the narrow stairwells, the forgotten wooden beams tucked beneath the eaves, and the low stone chambers near the foundations. It's quiet here, cold. Too, the walls are soft grey stone, worn smooth in some places by time and water, but in others they remain surprisingly sharp. This isn't either part of the castle where lords gave commands or where ceremonial fans were opened with a delicate flick. This is where Ashigaru foot soldiers once waited, where they bought, where they were held when accused, or punished when found guilty. The castle looms above you. But you're not here for its grandeur. You're here for the marks the human scratches left behind on the surface of stone and wood, barely visible at first, but impossible to forget once you see them. You pause in front of a low wooden post. The light from your small lantern flickers slightly, revealing a carving so thin it might be mistaken for a crack. But when you look closer, you see the careful effort. A name, or at least the remnants of one, followed by what appears to be a date, perhaps 1587. The digits are carved in old-style kanji, roughly, with shallow incisions probably made with a nail or broken blade. The spacing is uneven, hesitant. You imagine the hand that made it. Was he hiding here, waiting for execution, or just bored on a long night watch? Samurai castles weren't always glorious strongholds. They had storerooms, jails, quarters for low-ranking soldiers, men who slept on straw mats, men who cleaned latrines, men who were paid in rice. These were the Ashigaru, and some of them left marks. On the back of a sliding door, you find a crude drawing of what appears to be a horse-round body. Long legs, no saddle. The sketch is childlike, possibly carved by a young recruit or an older man remembering his village. Above the drawing, someone has scrawled a phrase that loosely translates to "I wait for a death as a stone waits for." Rain, a poetic line, melancholy and deliberate. It could have been graffiti, or a personal prayer, or a quiet joke, recorded by a tired man no one remembered. You move into a deeper passageway. Where the stone walls close in, this area once held supplies, but later was used as a prison. A tiny cell door remains. No handle, just iron hinges rusted stiff. Inside, there are more carvings, tally marks. Dozens of them, sometimes in vertical bundles of 5, sometimes scattered. These marks don't tell you what year it was, or who scratched them, but they do tell you that someone counted the days, or nights, or maybe just moments of clarity. On a beam near the ceiling, barely visible unless you're looking for it, is a flower motif, perhaps a plum blossom. Etched beside a small crescent moon, the lines are delicate, artistic, even hopeful. It's unclear who made it or why, but it feels different, more intentional, as though someone wanted to leave behind something. Beautiful in a place built to contain misery. These markings were never meant to be seen centuries later. They weren't declarations or manifestos. They were passing thoughts, desperate scratches, acts of defiance, or boredom, or loneliness. But now they're the only voices left from those lives. You walk slowly, running your hand over the wooden walls, not to feel the carvings, but just to connect with the space. You start to notice more the longer you linger. Faint shapes, letters, even small game boards, like a simple version of Go, etched into a floorboard, likely played with pebbles or beans. Something to pass time. These weren't powerful samurai. They weren't generals or famous poets. They were the invisible men who moved the war machines, who marched, cooked, waited, and sometimes died without ceremony. Their stories rarely made it into scrolls or records. But here, in the back corners of castles and prison halls, their lives are still faintly outlined, like shadows caught in old wood. The more you look, the more you feel their presence, not in a haunted way, but in the simple way that time doesn't always erase everything. You pause before leaving and stare once more at the line about waiting for death. It's elegant, almost philosophical, and yet whoever wrote it may have been a foot soldier with no education, no family name, no honor of his own. Just a dagger and a thought. You take one last slow breath, letting the stillness fill you. Then you climb the narrow stairs, back into the castle's brighter halls. Tourists mill round the upper levels, reading about battle strategies and daimyo alliances. But they don't know what's beneath. They don't hear the quiet voices carved into the beams below. You do. And you'll carry them with you, not loudly, but gently, like an echo in the back of your mind. Some stories shout. Others just leave a scratch on a wall and hope someone, someday, will notice. You awaken not to the sound of a rooster or the clatter of armor, but to the gentle shuffle of silk sliding open. A servant kneels just inside the sliding door of your private chamber. You are a daimyo, a feudal lord of Sengoku, Japan, and the weight of a domain rests invisibly on your shoulders before you even rise from your futon. The floor beneath you is polished wood, soft under your bare feet, the tatami mats ranged in perfect precision. You're not in a battlefield tent, and you haven't been for some time. You live in a sprawling estate at the center of a fortified castle town. Yet, every move you make, even as simple as accepting tea or nodding at a servant, is a performance of power. Breakfast is formal. You do not eat alone. Your advisors and favored retainers may be present. Depending on the day, food is seasonal, ranged with delicate aesthetic purpose. A small lacquered tray with pickled vegetables, rice, grilled fish humble on the surface, but each dish represents networks of supply, loyalty, and local control. After breakfast comes the sitting. You kneel in the reception hall. Several layers of silk and armor lie just beneath your outer robes. You rarely wear full armor anymore, not unless riding out or presenting yourself before the shogunate. Instead, your authority is in the way you hold your fan, the measured way you speak, and how still you can remain while others speak. Reports are delivered from all corners of your territory: grain shortages, tax records, whispers of peasant unrest, updates from castle garrisons. You must appear calm, always. You never frown. You never raise your voice. Your presence alone is supposed to settle disputes. But you're always calculating. If one vassal begins to collect too many retainers, you must divide his responsibilities. If a neighboring daimyo shows interest in one of your castle towns, You must subtly remind him of your alliance with the shogun, or perhaps prepare to move your army before he does. Mid-morning brings guests, a tea ceremony, perhaps, or the arrival of a minor noble seeking an audience. Every interaction is layered with meaning. You are expected to demonstrate hospitality, respect for tradition, and shrewd diplomacy all at once. The tea itself powdered matcha. Whisked with precision is less important than the manner in which you present it. Ayor. Gestures to fast, to casual, the smallest misstep can suggest arrogance or weakness. Afternoon brings time for correspondence. You do not write most of your letters personally, but you dictate their tone and message, an apology to the shogunate for a delayed rice shipment, a congratulatory note to another lord on the birth of a son, a carefully worded refusal to a marriage proposal from a lesser house. Politics does not pause, not even for war. You also consult with military advisors. The layout of your castle is constantly being reviewed. You commission new weapons from blacksmiths. Ensure your spearmen are training with precision, and quietly monitor whether any of your samurai have grown too ambitious. In peacetime, loyalty becomes brittle. You spend money you don't have to keep your warriors loyal, and grants, gifts, promises of future rewards. And yet, you must also tax your peasants just enough to sustain the illusion of stability. Too much, and they rebel. Too little, and you appear weak. There is always a line. You walk it every day. In the evening, you may take time in your garden. Stones carefully placed in raked gravel. A koi pond so still it looks painted. You pause near the plum trees, their blossoms falling silently into the water. This moment, perhaps, is your only one of peace, and even it is designed built to reflect your refined status. Your connection to nature, your adherence to wabi-sabi. But in your mind, you're still remembering the courier's message, a castle fire near your western border, a merchant with questionable ties to the enemy. A child born under suspicious circumstances in one of your concubine's chambers, even your family, is political. Your sons are assets. Your daughters are diplomatic offerings. Each relative is either a future tool or a potential threat. At night, you return to chambers dimly lit with oil lanterns. You bathe not only for cleanliness, but ritual. His servant pours water over your shoulders. Steam rises. Your body bears the scars of battle from a youth long gone. Now your battles are fought with ink. Bows and silence. Before you sleep, you burn incense pine and cedar. You read a short poem, perhaps one of your own. Then you lie still. No string, no muttering in your sleep. Even in rest, you are expected to be composed. The weight of rule doesn't lift with the closing of your eyes. It only shifts. Settling deeper into your dreams, you might remember the battlefield, or you might see your castle from above its gates, its walls, its people, all of them expecting you to hold everything together. In name, you are a lord. But in reality, you are a prisoner of performance, every movement choreographed, every decision scrutinized, every success balanced on the edge of possible betrayal. You command hundreds, perhaps thousands, and yet you are never truly alone. Eyes watch from every corridor. Whispers live in every wall. And in the morning, when the shoji slides open again and the light creeps into your chamber, you rise not as a man but as a symbol, already weighed down by another day of quiet war. You are born into a samurai household, not as a warrior, but as a daughter, a wife, or perhaps a younger son without inheritance. You live within the walls of a high-ranking samurai residence. Where the air is quiet, the walkways are swept clean, and the silence says more than the spoken word. The home itself is built like a scroll, elegant, controlled, designed to keep emotions folded behind sliding doors. The household has rules, layers, and strict codes of conduct that define who sits where, who eats first, and who may speak at all. At the top is the head of the family, your father or husband, whose word is law, though he may barely speak. His presence echoes through the house even in absence. The rest of the family exists round him like a constellation, orbiting, adjusting, never colliding. As a woman, you rise before sunrise. Your duties begin in silence. You check on the preparations for a breakfast simple, balanced, and seasonally appropriate. You supervise the servants, correct mistakes with a glance, and ensure that everything appears effortless. But it is not. You were trained for this. You were taught to walk with small steps, to fold kimono sleeves precisely, to pour tea with grace and know when to stop speaking. Education is prized, but only in certain forms. You know poetry, classical Chinese literature, and the 23 appropriate themes for a seasonal calligraphy. You do not speak of politics unless your husband asks. You do not laugh loudly. Your letters are brief, elegant, and coded. If you are a younger son, your life is no more free. You will likely be sent to another household as a retainer, a hostage, or a monk. You study swordsmanship, archery, and Confucian ethics, but your destiny is written by birth order. Your oldest brother inherits the name, the lands, the future. You live to serve him, or to serve the family's reputation elsewhere. Marriage is rarely your choice. As a daughter, you are married to cement alliances, bind feuding families, or elevate the clan's prestige. Sometimes you are sent far from home, to a household where you are watched constantly, where even the servants report on your behavior. You must bear sons, but not too quickly. You must be loyal, but never too opinionated. Your honor is your family's currency. A misstep, a rumor, a letter, a look can bring disgrace that echoes for generations. Inside the household, there is a strict ritual to everything: seasonal festivals, ancestor veneration. Scroll changes in the reception room. You bow at the right time. You wear subdued colors. You fast. During mourning, you write condolence poems with trembling brushstrokes. Even if your heart is not moved, you spend afternoons in quiet rooms practicing ikebana or reciting classical phrases. But behind the quiet, tension hums, the pressure to maintain faith, to uphold legacy. To never err it wears down even the strongest. If a scandal erupts infidelity, disobedience, even a servant's careless word, the entire household suffers. You may be confined, questioned, sent away, or worse, honor must be preserved at all costs. Women in samurai households learn to wield their own forms of power, quiet influence through suggestion, alliances through gossip, subtle control of servants, and the careful management of sons. Some even learn the naginata, a polearm weapon taught to women for defense of the household in times of war. But it is not romanticized. It is part of survival. If the castle is attacked, you are expected to protect the inner quarters, kill yourself if captured, and destroy letters or family seals. Self-sacrifice is a daily expectation, not a poetic abstraction. Seppuku, the ritual suicide performed by male samurai, has its own counterpart for women, known as jagai. It is performed in silence, with a dagger and a cord to bind the legs, to preserve modesty in death. It is not common, but every woman in the household knows it exists and why. At mealtimes, the family gathers, but the tone is muted. No one eats before the head of the house. Children speak only when spoken to. Every gesture is observed. Rank determines who sits closest to the alcove, where a hanging scroll reflects the family's seasonal mood. Snow scenes in winter, cranes in spring, stormy pines in times of political strain. There is beauty, yes, but it is constrained, framed, and never without purpose in the evenings. The house dims, or lamps flicker. Servants move in near silence. If your husband calls for you, you go without question. If your child falls ill, you tend them with quiet care and prayers to the ancestors. If your brother is killed in battle, you weep behind a fan, never in public. You are the still water beneath the surface of a turbulent age. You are the silence that supports the samurai scream. Some nights, you read poetry by the lamp, waka verses written centuries ago, their restrained emotion echoing your own. You write back, in secret, in your journal never to be shared, never to be read, in another life. You might have been a poet, a painter, a thinker, but in this life, you are duty, you are legacy. You are the invisible scaffolding of power, and when the household sleeps, when the guards rotate shifts and the wind hums against paper doors, you lie still, hands folded. You dream not of freedom, but of harmony, not of change, but of balance. The world outside may burn with warlords and shifting alliances, but inside the samurai household, the greatest battle is staying perfectly still, every single day. You live not in a battlefield, nor behind castle walls, but in the refined hush of the imperial capital Kyoto, where words weigh more than weapons. And the rustle of silk replaces the clatter of armor, here, in the shadow of centuries. You are a court noble, a member of the Kyuji aristocracy, or perhaps a lady-in-waiting, a scholar. A scribe, your family's prestige rests not on conquest, but on lineage, on names inked in scrolls, on poems exchanged between ancestors before warlords had even drawn their first breath. Your world is painted in layers, layers of clothing, protocol, incense, poetry, seasons, and silences. The morning begins not with urgency, but with precision. You awaken to the muted gold light of a Kyoto dawn, filtered through shoji screens, as sparrows sing among moss-covered tiles. You bathe with perfumed water and select your robes based on the calendar, the weather, and the subtle political winds of the day, a dozen silken layers in seasonally appropriate. Hues wisteria in spring, burnt persimmon in autumn. You must be a walking poem. You attend court not with a purpose to legislate, for the true power now lies with the shogun far away, but with a duty to maintain the rituals of an older, quieter power. You recite waka poems before breakfast, play incense games that test your memory of ancient verses, and compose calligraphy with brushes so fine they feel like wind in your hand. Every movement is choreographed. Even how you bow must be learned. You bow lower to those of senior rank, slower to those of uncertain favor. You write letters where a misplaced metaphor could cost your family standing, the palace halls. Echo not with noise, but with layered meaning gestures, glances. Folds of paper tied with symbolic colors. Political battles are fought with ink and suggestion. If you serve the imperial family, you may spend your day arranging scrolls, delivering correspondence, or performing courtly rituals. There is little room for error. Say too much and you are indiscreet. Say too little and you are. Colton. One misstep at a poetry recital or a misplaced phrase in an ode to the moon may spark whispers that tarnish a name for years. You walk through corridors lined with history. The Heian period still breathes in the paintings, in the ghostly remnants of Genji-like romances once exchanged in lacquered rooms. You are surrounded by traditions so ancient they seem to stand still. Yet beneath the serenity lies fragility. The court exists in a bubble of ceremony and elegance. While real power shifts beyond its gates, the Ashikaga shogunate, or perhaps later the Tokugawa regime, tolerates the court for its symbolism, its legitimacy, but your life, your influence, now depends on remaining relevant in ritual alone. Still, you hold onto that role with dignified grace when a new poem anthology is compiled. It is an event of national importance. When a noble child's naming ceremony is held, poets compete to provide the most elegant phrase. Even in decline, the court defines what beauty means. You may serve tea in the afternoon to visiting scholars or monks. Surrounded by garden paths raked into perfect waves, you must know which incense suits the weather, which arrangement of chrysanthemums suits morning. At dusk, you light lanterns not for illumination, but to echo the fading of the day's emotions. You are taught to weep with restraint, to laugh only behind a fan. Even your sadness must follow form. At night, your quarters glow with the faint orange of candlelight. The city outside lies quiet beneath her. Mountain silhouette, its streets lined with willow and stone. You might write a verse before sleep, perhaps, about the sound of wind in bamboo or the loneliness of a crane nest call. You write not for publication, but for lineage. Your verse will be read by future generations to measure your grace. Even dreams must be tasteful. In this world, silence speaks loudest. Women of the court wield power of influence, of matchmaking, of shaping public taste. The most admired women can determine fashion trends or the fortunes of young nobles with a single compliment, their conversations, though spoken softly in inner chambers. Travel far beyond the palace, but theirs is a delicate power ever on the edge of invisibility. Always one breath away from scandal, the court is a place where scandal is theatre and discretion is survival. There are affairs, rivalries, broken engagements, rumors, banishments, but all are conducted in veiled language, through poetry laden with illusion. A cherry blossom branch sent at the wrong time may destroy a reputation, a silk fan left in the wrong place might suggest too much. Even couriers are trained to deliver messages with neutral faces, lest they reveal the mood of their sender. You are always being watched, always performing. Yet there is peace in this, too, for those who master the rituals. Court life offers rhythm, a stability not found in the warlord provinces. While castles fall and alliances shift in blood, here you mark the year with plum blossoms. Lantern festivals, the changing colors of the imperial robes. Here, time moves slowly, measured not in victories but in verses. You go to bed hearing temple bells echo from across the city. You are wrapped in silk, the scent of sandalwood in your hair, a fan folded beside your pillow. Your dreams are layered, like your clothing soft, elegant, and shaped by centuries of etiquette. And though the outside world may have long stopped listening, you continue the ceremony, because in Kyoto, beauty is duty, and you're its keeper. You are the most powerful man in all of Japan, at least on paper. The title of Sei Teishigen rests on your shoulders, bestowed by the emperor. Reinforced by decades, or even centuries of martial tradition, lords bow to your command. Warriors pledge their lives to your name, and every edict you issue carries the weight of law. But inside the thick walls of Edo Castle, or in earlier times, Kamakura or Kyoto, you do not walk freely. You live within a carefully measured life, surrounded by ritual, guarded by men who would die for you, or perhaps poison your tea. Power, you find, is a golden cage. You wake before sunrise, your schedule already decided for the day. Your robes are chosen according to the hour, the season, and the court astrologer's readings. You don't dress yourself. Attendants help you into your layers of formal kimono, some bearing clan emblems more ancient than your own name. Breakfast is prepared without spice or extravagance, not because you lack wealth, but because indulgence is dangerous. Too much luxury invites whispers, too much flavor offends tradition. You eat in silence, surrounded by stillness. Outside your chamber, the castle is a city unto itself. Walls of stone, gates guarded day and night, gardens raked to impossible perfection. You rarely leave. You cannot ride through the streets like a common lord, cannot visit shrines without an entourage. You are a symbol now, not a man. Your movements are limited, not because you're weak, but because no one wants the shogun vulnerable, not your advisors, not your enemies, not even your own family. Meetings begin promptly. You sit behind a screen, barely visible to your council of elders. Your voice measured, your face impassive. Decisions must be made not quickly, but correctly. Every word you speak ripples outward. You approve taxes, sanction marriages between daimyo families, consider reports from distant provinces. A bandit uprising in the north, a rice shortage in Kyushu, a quarrel between two clans that dates. Back for generations, you must appear above it all. Neutral, controlled, godlike, but you are not. A god, you are a man born into armor and now bound by etiquette. You once trained with sword and bow, now your weapon is precedent. You may wield a brush more than a blade, and even that brush is heavy. There are moments when you sit alone in your study, looking out at the garden. A heron steps across the pond's edge. You envy its freedom. Your children are raised not by you, but by tutors and courtiers. They are groomed for alliance, for succession, not affection. Your wife may be political, a match between clans, not of love. Even she may live in a separate wing, and your conversations, though polite, are often supervised. Privacy is a luxury denied to rulers at night. Your guards rotate in shifts. Some are old samurai families loyal for centuries. Others are spies placed by rival lords or cautious advisors. You smile at them all. You must. The castle's great hall is where you receive foreign envoys, Korean diplomats paying tribute, Dutch traders permitted to speak through interpreters, Jesuit priests whose very presence must be reported. You listen, nod, sometimes answer, but never show too much interest. Curiosity is dangerous in a ruler. Better to let your chamberlains decide how many Portuguese muskets should be allowed into Nagasaki. You are briefed on policy, foreign affairs, internal unrest, but always from a distance. The shogun must appear omniscient, but never burdened. You are expected to radiate calm in the face of chaos, so you nod again, and smile again, and remain still. Festivals occur throughout the year, grand processions, tea ceremonies, poetry gatherings, but you attend only in form. Your presence is symbolic, your gestures rehearsed, sometimes. You sit for a portrait that will hang in every daimyo estate. It must depict you serene, powerful, eternal. A shogun never ages, a shogun never errs. Your face becomes a mask. The castle, though grand, is a maze of surveillance and silence, rooms with sliding doors, hidden passageways, courtiers and guards stationed behind screens. You grow used to being watched. Even your most trusted allies may keep journals of your behavior. They must, to protect you or to protect themselves if you fall. At night, you walk alone through the inner courtyard, under paper lanterns and the scent of pine. The wind carries distant echoes of drums from a village festival you'll never attend. The world you rule lies just beyond the moat, unreachable. Sometimes you wonder what it is like to walk through a rice field with no guard at your back, to eat with farmers by a fire, to see a kabuki play not from a private balcony, but among the crowd. But these thoughts are indulgent, and indulgence is weakness, so you let them go. You sit beneath the cherry trees when they bloom, the petals falling like slow snow. Even in beauty, you are aware of symbolism, the falling petal, like a fallen warrior brief, brilliant and destined to vanish. You quote a verse aloud, inscribed nearby records it. Perhaps it will be remembered, perhaps not. In this world of absolute power, you begin to vanish behind the very authority you command. You become myth while still alive, and in some quiet part of your mind, you understand the truth. The shogun does not live freely. He exists for the structure, for the balance, for the illusion of order in a fractured land. Your cage is made of gold and silence, but it is still a cage, and you, the warlord of Japan, sleep behind locked screens, beneath silk banners, with a sword at your side that you may never again draw.